The moon was high in the sky, creating an eerie glow over the lonesome graveyard. The wind blew through the trees, making the leaves rustle like faraway whispers. As I stood at the entryway, my heart hammered with a strange combination of exhilaration and anxiety. I had accepted the task of spending an entire night alone in the cemetery. As I entered the gates, a shiver ran down my spine. The gravestones appeared to tower over me, their shadows dancing in the moonlight. I made my way deeper into the cemetery, feeling the weight of the past as I walked along the ancient walkways. The silence was terrible, interrupted only by my own footsteps. Each stride echoed through the night, heightening the feeling of loneliness. I couldn't help but think of the countless souls buried beneath me, their stories long forgotten. It was a place where life and death met, and the line between the living and the dead seemed thin. As I moved deeper into the cemetery, I noticed an old mausoleum. It stood as a sentinel, its deteriorating facade a monument to the passage of time. Curiosity got the best of me, so I pushed open the hefty iron doors. Inside, the air was stale and musty. The wavering candlelight barely illuminated the moist walls. The artwork on the tomb was both disturbing and intriguing. It featured scenes of death, decay, and despair, but the hideous paintings contained unmistakable beauty. Strange things started happening as the hours passed. Whispers swirled at the edge of my hearing. In my peripheral vision, I saw fleeting shadows. I felt the weight of unseen eyes tracking my every movement. It was as if the souls trapped in this cemetery were restless, yearning to communicate with the living. A shudder shot down my spine, and I sensed a presence behind me. I turned, but nothing was there. Doubt came into my head, but I'd come this far, so I refused to let fear consume me. I pressed on, exploring the cemetery's deeper corners. In one of these areas, I discovered a long-forgotten burial. The headstone was aged and decrepit, with the lettering too faded to read. I went down to brush off the dirt, and as if in answer, a chilly blast of wind rushed through the cemetery. In that moment, I felt a wave of misery and despair rush over me. It was as if the essence of the forgotten soul buried underneath me had permeated my own body. Panic welled up inside me, and I resisted the need to run. As the first glimmer of dawn appeared, I made my way to the exit. The cemetery appeared to exhale as the grasp of darkness loosened. I exited from the gates, my heart pumping and my thoughts forever altered. The encounter had been unnerving, both terrible and yet beautiful. It had challenged my understanding of life and death. Even though I left the cemetery physically unhurt, I carried the weight of the souls that lingered, their stories indelibly inscribed in my memory. From that night on, I saw the world through fresh eyes, realizing that beneath the surface lay a realm beyond our understanding. It was a lesson in overcoming our anxieties and embracing the unknown, for it is in the darkest places that the seeds of artistry and creativity grow. I walked briskly through the dimly lit streets, feeling the chilly breeze on my face. It was late at night, and I had just completed my shift at the office. Tired and longing for the comforts of home, I decided to take a shortcut via the old cemetery. The moon was obscured by thick clouds, casting an eerie glow over the tombstones that stretched for kilometers. As I approached the cemetery gates, a shiver ran down my spine. The atmosphere was oppressive, with a distinct sense of uneasiness. But I dismissed my concerns, attributing them to weariness and an overactive imagination. As I progressed deeper into the graveyard, the light from the lampposts faded, leaving me in darkness. The silence became deafening, interrupted only by the distant hooting of an owl. I upped my pace, wanting to get to the other side as soon as possible. Fear swept over me, and I automatically began to flee. But when I looked over my shoulder, the figure was no longer there. I paused, panting heavily, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. Was my imagination playing tricks on me? I chose to continue my journey, albeit warily. The cemetery appeared to go on forever, with the tombstones becoming more aged and deteriorated. I soon found myself on a tiny, twisting route lined with huge trees. A strong burst of wind made the trees rustle and their branches shake eerily. And then I heard it, a gentle, disembodied whisper reverberating through the night, sending chills down my spine. I strained my ears to hear the words, but all I could hear were fragments of sentences interspersed with a deep, demonic laughing. My nerves were fraying, and panic began to set in. I came across a fallen gravestone, its epitaph virtually illegible. In a blur of panic and desperation, I reached out to stabilize myself and found a cold, lifeless hand beneath my fingertips. I recoiled in horror and fell on the ground. As I looked up, I noticed them, ghastly figures emerging from the darkness, their eyes gleaming with malice as they closed in on me. They moved at breakneck pace, their laughter getting louder and more terrifying. I yelled, leaping to my feet, and ran toward the cemetery's exit. Adrenaline rushed through my veins, forcing me onward. I could feel their presence pressing in, their cold breath on the back of my neck. Finally, I broke through the gates and collapsed on the pavement outside. I gulped for oxygen, tears running down my cheeks. The nightmare was over, leaving a trail of horror and confusion. To this day, I can't describe what happened at that graveyard. But one thing is certain, I will never forget the terrible event, which will remain imprinted in my consciousness as a warning of the evils that can exist in this world.